Welcome to the Sky Commander Flight Brief. It's your mission-ready podcast for drone pilot training and aerial insights across Canada.
From Transport Canada rules to real-world drone ops, we break it down, take you higher, and help you earn your wings. Because here at skycommander.ca, we don't just fly.
It hints there's more to it. It's a masterclass, a deeper level, maybe a philosophy or a community focus, perhaps.
It's definitely intriguing, sets them apart from just, a basic tips show. Skycommander.ca is the obvious next step. Precisely. If you're thinking about flying a drone in Canada, boom, this content is aimed right at you.
Powered by skycommander.ca.
The elite podcast for Canada's drone pilot. Okay, let's get started. Today, our perspective is shifting, quite dramatically, actually. We're heading up to 30,000 feet and beyond.
Taking the high ground.
Exactly. We're doing a deep dive into the mental game of aviation safety. We'll be focusing on something called aeronautical decision-making, or ADM for short.
And its cousin, SRM, Single Pilot Resource Management, crucial for solo operators.
Right. And our mission today is really to unpack these precise, pretty rigorous mental frameworks, the ones pilots use whether they're flying airliners or, sophisticated drones day in, day out to manage risk.
To stay safe, fundamentally.
But the real goal here for you listening is to see if we can extract those systematic judgment tools. How can we apply that kind of thinking to the complex, sometimes high-stakes decisions we all face? In work, in life.
Yeah, that's the fascinating part, the crossover potential.
Okay, so let's frame this. There's a really startling statistic we found in the sources. It kind of sets the stage.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
Most people, when they think about flying, they picture the technical skill, right? The hands-on stuff, the stick and rudder mastery.
Smooth landings, handling turbulence.
Yeah. But the data shows that approximately 80% of all aviation accidents aren't just about mechanical failure or bad weather. They're attributed to the human factor.
The person in the loop.
And here's the kicker. The vast majority of those human-related accidents happen during the really busy high-stakes moments. Takeoff, approach, landing.
High workload phases.
That single statistic just forces the whole safety conversation away from only the machine and squarely onto the decision maker. The pilot's mind.
That 80% figure is precisely why modern aviation safety culture is what it is today.
Yeah?
It's this relentless focus on the mind, not just the metal.
Okay.
And to start building that focus, pilots get rigorously trained on the difference between a hazard and the risk that comes from it.
Okay, define those for us.
Sure. A hazard is simply, it's any condition or event that could potentially cause harm. Think light icing on the wings, maybe a strong crosswind hitting the runway, even a tiny nick in a propeller blade. Those are all hazards, potential problems.
Right, things that might go wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But risk is the active assessment of that hazard. It's actually a formal calculation. You look at the likelihood of that hazard causing an incident, and you multiply that by the severity of the outcome if it happens.
Likelihood times severity. Okay.
And this is where experience really kicks in. An expert pilot perceives and calculates that risk very differently from a novice.
How so?
They've built up this deep internalized mental database. It's not just from logging flight hours, so that's part of it. It's built from reflection.
Thinking about past flights.
Constantly. Analyzing close calls, asking what went right, but maybe more importantly, what could have gone wrong, even on a totally successful flight. It's that cycle experience plus reflection that lets expert pilots set much more conservative personal minimums.
So they hold themselves to a higher standard than just the legal minimum.
Way beyond. Their internal safety threshold is pushed much, much higher.
That idea, the constantly evolving mental database, that feels like the core of what we're chasing today.
It absolutely is.
It's what separates someone who can just operate the controls from a pilot who has the judgment to survive, really.
Well said.
So, to make these concepts less abstract, let's really ground them. We're going to start with a detailed look at a tragic case study, one that really highlights the failure of ADM.
And specifically, the devastating impact of an unmanaged ego.
Yeah. Once we understand that failure mode, we'll spend most of our time systematically building up the toolkit, the models like 3P, PAVE, CARE, team that pilots use to turn gut feeling into a repeatable, almost auditable safety process.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, let's dive straight into the specifics of that case study we mentioned. We're talking about the crash of a twin-engine Cessna 414 Chancellor. It happened near Fullerton, California.
Back on Super Bowl Sunday, February 3rd, 2019.
Right. And the pilot profile here is absolutely crucial to understanding why this happened. This wasn't some inexperienced pilot.
No, far from it.
He was instrument rated, which is a key qualification for flying in clouds or low visibility. And his logbook showed over 10,200 logged flight hours. That's a huge amount of experience.
A veteran pilot by any measure.
The flight departed from Fullerton Municipal Airport, KFUL, heading to Minden Tahoe Airport up in Nevada. A decent cross-country trip, maybe 320 nautical miles or so.
Standard stuff for an aircraft like the 414.
Now, the conditions right at departure, technically they were VFR, visual flight rules, meaning theoretically he could navigate just by looking outside.
Clear enough to take off legally under VFR.
But the weather picture across Southern California was deteriorating fast.
Yeah, there was this low-pressure trough moving through, bringing rain, unstable air. Not ideal.
And our sources show that Air Traffic Control, ATC, actually gave the pilot a specific heads up. They cautioned him about weather building up about 4 miles east of the airport, heavier rain, potential turbulence.
A direct warning about deteriorating conditions just ahead on his route.
Exactly. And despite this being a cross-country flight, despite the worsening weather forecast, and despite that direct ATC warning...
Let me guess. No flight plan filed.
Correct. No formal flight plan. And crucially, no record of him getting a formal pre-flight weather briefing from a flight service specialist.
Wow. Okay. So skipping crucial pre-flight steps.
So you have the warning, the conditions, 10,000 plus hours of experience, yet he chose to press on. The Cessna took off, made a climbing left turn heading east.
Towards the area ATC warned him about.
And about 4 minutes after takeoff, he'd traveled those 4 miles east. Flew right into it.
Bang, into the soup.
The weather was far worse than VFR limits allowed. He instantly entered severe conditions, heavy rain, significant turbulence, and instrument meteorological conditions, IMC. He couldn't see outside anymore.
Which is precisely what the instrument rating is for. But entering IMC unexpectedly, especially VFR into IMC, is incredibly dangerous. It leads to spatial disorientation.
Explain that. What happens?
When you lose visual references the horizon, the ground, your inner ear, plays tricks on you. You feel like you're turning when you're not, or climbing when you're descending. You must trust your instruments.
He had the roading. He should have been able to handle it, theoretically.
Theoretically. But the data recovered from an onboard device, an ADS-B receiver, it told a terrifying story. He lost control almost immediately upon entering the clouds.
How bad was it?
In the final 15 seconds, to 15 seconds.
Yeah.
The aircraft dropped about 5,000 feet.
Wow.
The pitch angle went wild, from 45 degrees nose down to an unbelievable 75 degrees nose up, back and forth. And the bank angle, swinging over 150 degrees left and 150 degrees right. Just completely out of control.
That sounds violent, like a physical struggle inside the cockpit.
It absolutely indicates that. He was clearly trying to hand-fly the aircraft through this severe upset in a high-stress, disoriented state.
But wait, you said it was a Cessna 414. Don't those usually have autopilots?
They do. This one was equipped with a functioning S-Tech 55X autopilot, a critical resource for handling IMC or high workload. He ignored it.
Chose to hand fly in that chaos instead of engaging the autopilot.
Correct. And the stresses from those violent maneuvers, the extreme pitching and banking at high speed, they actually exceeded the structural design limits of the airframe.
The plane broke apart.
In flight, yes.
Yeah.
The NTSB found the horizontal stabilizer and parts of the wing separated before impact. The wreckage was scattered over almost 1,000 feet. And crucially, they found no evidence of mechanical failure beforehand.
So the plane didn't fail him?
No. The aircraft was destroyed simply because the pilot flew VFR into known IMC, lost control, and overstressed the airframe.
And the NTSB, the investigators, they didn't just call it a mistake. They pointed to something deeper, didn't they?
They did. They attributed the accident directly to the pilot consistently displaying hazardous attitudes.
It seems almost unbelievable. 10,000 hours. How does someone with that much time fall prey to, well, attitudes?
That's the million-dollar question in human factors. Experience doesn't automatically equal good judgment. The FAA actually defines 5 specific hazardous attitudes that are known to undermine safe decision-making.
Okay, what are they?
And the NTSB report on this pilot, it reads like a case study, almost an extreme example of the most dangerous one. Anti-authority.
Anti-authority, meaning?
It's the core belief that rules don't apply to you. Whether it's FAA regulations, ATC instructions, even just established best practices, the person with this attitude thinks they're somehow above them.
Yeah.
Exempt.
Like the rules are for everyone else.
Precisely. And it wasn't just this one flight in 2019. The NTSB dug into his history. They found a documented incident way back in 1977.
What happened then?
He was flying, faced low visibility icing conditions, similar setup. But back then, he wasn't instrument rated.
Yeah.
And he explicitly lied to ATC, told them he was instrument rated just so he could get clearance to continue the flight through bad weather.
He lied to ATC about his qualifications.
Yes. A judge later found he knowingly disregarded the rules and suspended his license for 120 days. Fast forward 4 decades to 2019. Now he is instrument rated, but what does he do? Skips filing the IFR flight plan, dismisses the ATC weather warning, and tries to just punch through the weather VFR without clearance.
It's the same pattern.
A deep-seated, consistent pattern. Disregarding the system, the rules, the warnings, whenever they conflicted with his immediate goal of getting where he wanted to go.
That's genuinely chilling. It suggests experience didn't correct the flaw, it maybe even reinforced it over time, allowed him to get away with it until he didn't.
That's often how it works. This anti-authority stance, it's a kind of cognitive arrogance. You see it in experienced professionals in many fields, not just aviation. They get complacent, overconfident, start seeing rules as just inconvenient obstacles.
Were other attitudes at play too?
Oh, definitely. The NTSB findings suggest he also exhibited the 2 other most common ones. First, invulnerability.
It won't happen to me.
Exactly. The dangerous belief that serious accidents, crashes, they only happen to other pilots, not to someone with my skills, my hours. This lets you accept risks you objectively shouldn't.
And the second one?
Macho. This is the inclination to prove yourself, show off your skills, often by taking unnecessary risks, like pushing into known bad weather just to prove you can handle it, or to make sure you arrive on schedule.
Like turning back would be admitting weakness.
Precisely. Instead of seeing it as a professional, prudent decision.
Okay, if I try to translate those, anti-authority in an office might be skipping safety protocols on equipment because they slow you down.
Right, or ignoring company policy because you think it's dumb.
Invulnerability. Maybe ignoring a doctor's advice for preventative screening because I feel perfectly healthy.
Perfect analogy. These attitudes are universal human tendencies.
You said there were 5. What are the other 2?
We should mention them briefly. There's impulsivity, acting too quickly without thinking things through, not reading the full checklist, just leaping before looking.
Reacting instead of responding.
Yeah. And the 5th is resignation. It's kind of the opposite, believing what happens, happens. Giving up when things get tough, not actively seeking solutions or using available resources, sort of a fatalistic attitude.
So while anti-authority, invulnerability, and macho seemed dominant in the Fullerton crash,
They often cluster together.
yeah,
But all 5 are these natural human traps we have to learn to spot in ourselves and actively fight against.
okay. So the Fullerton tragedy starkly shows the deadly outcome when these attitudes, especially that anti-authority ego, run unchecked.
A catastrophic failure of judgment.
So how do pilots fight these? How do you build defenses against your own human nature? You can't just rely on willpower.
Absolutely not. You need a system, a structured approach. And that's exactly what the aeronautical decision-making frameworks provide. They are the defense mechanisms.
Let's transition then. Let's build that structured defense.
Right. So to guard against those hazardous attitudes and just, basic human error, pilots are trained in this systematic, continuous process, ADM.
Aeronautical decision-making.
And it's formalized into what's called the 3P model. It's a loop. Perceive, right arrow, process, right arrow forward.
Perceive, process, perform.
Okay, and the key thing is, this isn't just a checklist you run once before you start the engines. It's designed to be a continuous loop running constantly. Before the flight, during the flight, even after the flight, during debrief, you're always assessing.
Always monitoring the safety envelope.
Exactly. You might have heard of the military's ODL loop, observe, orient, decide, act.
Yeah, Colonel John Boyd's concept.
Well, the 3P model is basically a simplified aviation-focused cousin of ODA. Same core idea. Stay aware, filter that awareness through a structured analysis, make the safest choice, act on it, and then immediately start the loop over again.
Keep cycling through it.
Right. The goal is to keep the decision flow moving, stay ahead of the aircraft, and avoid getting stuck in analysis paralysis.
Okay, let's break down each step. We need to spend some real time here. Step 1, perceive. This sounds like it's all about observation, right? Scanning for trouble.
Precisely. It's focusing your hazard scan. And the systematic tool pilots use for this is the PAVE checklist. PAVE.
PAVE. Okay, what does that stand for?
PAVE forces you to broaden your scan beyond just flying the plane.
So P is for Pilot. Yourself.
Yes. The most critical check, really. How are you? Your fitness to fly, your skills, your experience level, especially how recently you've flown specific maneuvers or in specific conditions. Are you current? More importantly, are you proficient?
Okay, pilot. What's A?
A is for aircraft. The machine itself, its condition, is all the equipment working? Does it have the right capabilities for this specific flight, navigation gear, enough fuel plus reserves? All that.
Makes sense. V.
V is for the environment, sometimes called environment, just to make the acronym work smoothly.
Ah, okay. The world outside.
Right, not just weather clouds, visibility, wind, but also terrain, obstacles, the time of day or night, lighting conditions, and how complex is the airspace you'll be in. Is it busy? Restricted?
Pilot, aircraft, environment. What's E?
E is for external pressures. And honestly, this is often the killer.
The human factor sneaking back in.
Exactly. This covers things like pressure from clients, self-imposed deadlines, that powerful urge to get there, no matter what we call it, get there-itis. Or even just personal stress from home or work that might be eating up your focus.
PAVE. Pilot, aircraft, environment, external pressures. That's a pretty comprehensive scan.
It's the diagnostic tool. It forces you to systematically list out every potential hazard or issue connected to the flight. If you skip PAVE, you're not really managing risk, you're just hoping for the best, accepting unknown outcomes.
But hang on, that P for pilot, it feels a bit subjective. Am I fit to fly? When you're maybe feeling that E pressure, it's hard to judge yourself objectively, isn't it?
That is an excellent point. Self-assessment is notoriously unreliable, especially under pressure.
So is just thinking about P and PAV enough? Does it really counter things like invulnerability or macho attitudes, or do we need something more concrete for checking ourselves?
You absolutely need something more concrete. You've hit on a key challenge. We need a hard gate, a real checklist for the P in PAVE. And that's why the proactive self-assessment checklist called MSAFE is considered absolutely critical. It's the first step within the pilot check.
MSE. Okay, another acronym. Let's hear it.
MSAFE takes that fuzzy "am I fit" question and breaks it into 6 specific yes-no type checks.
What are they?
As for illness, even a minor cold can impact your concentration, your decision-making.
Okay.
M is for medication. Are you taking anything prescription or even over-the-counter that could cause drowsiness or impaired judgment? Antihistamines are a common culprit.
Right.
S is for stress. Are you dealing with significant life stress, financial worries, family issues, work problems that's consuming your mental bandwidth?
A
is for alcohol, obvious one. Strict rules here, like the 8 hours bottle to throttle rule, but also considering any residual effects, like a hangover. F is for fatigue. This is a huge one. Are you properly rested? Or are you running on fumes, maybe just 3 or 4 hours of sleep? Fatigue degrades performance massively.
And the E?
E is for emotion or eating. Are you dealing with some kind of emotional distress, upset, angry? And have you eaten properly? Low blood sugar also impacts cognition.
MSAFE. Illness, medication, stress, alcohol, fatigue, emotion eating.
That's it.
I really see the value now. MSAFE isn't just about feeling okay. It's a formalized structure for acknowledging that your physical and mental state directly impacts safety. It gives you a concrete reason to say, nope, I'm grounded today, without feeling guilty or like you're letting someone down.
Exactly. It kind of externalizes the decision. If you honestly answer the fatigue question and realize you only got 3 hours of sleep, the checklist pretty much makes the go call for you. It's a fantastic, low-effort way to mitigate impulsivity and invulnerability right at the start.
Okay, so we've used PAVE to perceive the hazards and MSAFE to check ourselves, the pilot. That brings us to step 2 in the 3P loop, process. This is where we analyze the risks we just identified, right?
Correct. Perception identifies the what. Process figures out so what.
Yeah.
This is where structured judgment really happens, using 2 main tools, the CARE model and the risk matrix.
CARE, okay, what's this one?
CARE guides the pilot from just listing a hazard found in PAVE to actually analyzing its implications and finding potential solutions. It forces critical thinking.
Break it down for us, CARE.
C is for consequences.
Yeah.
If this hazard actually happens, the engine fails, the weather turns unexpectedly bad, what is the absolute worst possible outcome?
Yeah.
You have to consider the highest potential severity, serious injury, loss of the aircraft, catastrophic failure.
Don't sugarcoat it.
No.
Yeah.
You face the worst case head on. A is for alternatives. What other options do you have that could lower the risk? Could you delay the flight, take a different route, maybe use a different aircraft that's better equipped, or even just cancel the mission?
Considering plan B, C, D.
Exactly. R is for reality. This is the cold, hard check on your capabilities versus the demands of this situation right now. Is the equipment actually performing as expected? Do the regulations really allow this specific operation in these conditions? This is where you confront facts like realizing the forecast crosswind is stronger than the demonstrated limit for your aircraft.
No wishful thinking.
None. And finally, E is for external pressures again. You identified them in PAVE, but here in CARE, you analyze their impact. How much additional risk is this pressure tempting me to accept? And crucially, how can I neutralize that pressure before it compromises my judgment?
That E, quantifying the pressure, that must be the hardest part. How do you put a number on the risk of, say, disappointing a client if you delay?
You're right, it's tough. And that's precisely where the risk matrix comes in. It provides the tool for quantifying that risk, making it less subjective.
Ah, the matrix. How does that work?
It's usually a simple grid. You plot the hazard you identified based on two things. Its likelihood, how likely is this hazard to actually occur, maybe low, medium, or high, versus its severity, if it does occur, how bad will the outcome be, minor, serious, or catastrophic.
Likelihood on one axis, severity on the other.
Right. So, for example, encountering some light turbulence on a flight might be high likelihood in certain weather, but the severity is probably minor, just some bumps, discomfort.
Okay.
But trying to fly VFR into IMC, like in the Fullerton case, if you decide to push into it, the likelihood of entering cloud becomes high, and the potential severity is clearly catastrophic.
So you plot each hazard on this grid.
And the grid is color-coded, usually green, amber, red. The rule's pretty simple. If your assessment lands a hazard in the amber zone, say high likelihood times serious severity, or anywhere in the red zone, like catastrophic severity,
Then the plan is a no-go as is.
exactly. The plan must change. You cannot simply accept that level of risk. The process step, using CARE and the risk matrix, has forced a decision. It actively prevents that resignation attitude by demanding you find a way to control the risk.
Okay. Perceive with PAVE safe, process with CARE and the risk matrix. Logically, step 3 must be perform, taking action.
That's it. You've identified the problem, analyzed the risk, now you execute a solution. And the tool here is the TEAM menu. T-E-A-M.
Team. What are the options?
TEAM gives you 4 clear, distinct choices for how to manage the risk. It prevents you from just doing something vague. It forces a specific control strategy.
Okay. T.
T is for transfer. You shift the risk. You can't eliminate it entirely, maybe, so you transfer some of the responsibility or the workload. This could mean bringing a visual observer VO on board specifically to watch that hazard you identified. Or, in the cockpit, maybe engaging the autopilot during a high-stress phase to transfer the physical flying task.
Okay. Transfer.
E is for eliminate. This is the most powerful one. You cancel the hazardous part of the operation entirely, or you cancel the whole flight. If the risk is assessed as unacceptable in the process step and you can't mitigate it sufficiently, the answer is simply no. Zero tolerance.
Hard stop. A.
A is for accept, but, and this is critical, you can only choose their risk, except for residual low risk. Risk that remains after you've applied all possible mitigations and which is fully compliant with regulations, and D, your own conservative personal minimums. You also generally need to document why you're accepting it.
So accept isn't just shrugging your shoulders. It's a conscious choice for low managed risk.
Absolutely. And finally, M is for mitigate. This is probably the most common action. You apply specific tactical controls to lower the likelihood or severity of the hazard. Things like slowing down, increasing your altitude or standoff distance, using specific equipment features, maybe getting a specific authorization like we'll discuss with drones later.
PAV scans, CARE analyzes, team executes. That's the 3P loop.
Perceive, process, perform. Continuously.
And it works strategically weeks before a mission, tactically during the pre-flight checks, and critically minute by minute once you're actually in the air.
That's the goal. A constant cycle of vigilance and structured decision-making.
Okay, so we have this really robust, layered framework. 3P, PAV, CARE, Team, IMSAFE. It sounds great on paper.
It is effective.
Yeah.
When used consistently.
But human nature being what it is, I imagine there are still ways these hazardous attitudes or just simple biases can creep back in and derail the process, right? Especially those external pressures we keep mentioning.
Oh, absolutely. Human factors are relentless. We talked about the 5 core hazardous attitudes, but they often manifest as specific, common operational traps during flight.
Like what?
Well, the most universal one is probably get thermitis. We touched on it with the E in Povicare.
That pressure to reach the destination?
Yes, it's this irrational, often emotionally driven pressure to get where you're going. No matter what the changing conditions, weather, fuel state, aircraft issues are telling you, it's not just about being on schedule. Sometimes it's about the psychological cost of admitting failure or delaying plans.
We definitely saw that in the Fullerton case study. He pressed on instead of diverting or turning back.
Classic get thermitis. And think about how this applies outside aviation. That's deadline fever and project management, isn't it?
Totally. Pushing to launch a buggy software update just to hit a date on the calendar, even when QA is screaming about problems.
Exactly. The pressure to finish overrides the rational safety or quality analysis.
Okay, what's another common trap? You mentioned something visually dramatic earlier. Scud running.
Ah, yes. Scud running. It's a desperate, dangerous maneuver. It happens when a pilot flying VFR encounters lowering clouds or worsening visibility, but instead of turning back or diverting, they try to stay under the clouds, flying lower and lower to keep the ground in sight.
Trying to avoid going into the clouds, into IMC.
Exactly. Yeah. It's often a direct result of VFR into IMC continuing bias. But flying that low drastically increases the risk of hitting something unseen: hills, towers, antennas. It's a primary cause of what we call CFIT, controlled flight into terrain.
Flying a perfectly good airplane into the ground because you don't see it in time.
Precisely. Scud running just eats up your safety margins. It's a literal manifestation of sticking to the plan. I'll just duck under these clouds. I can still make it, long after the plan has become unsafe.
And beyond these operational mistakes, you also mentioned cognitive biases. The mental shortcuts that can quietly mess up the process step.
Yes, these are insidious because they feel like normal thinking. We have to actively fight them. A big one is plan continuation bias.
Sticking with the plan even when things change.
Right. It's mental inertia. You've invested time and effort into a plan, so you're psychologically resistant to changing it, even when new information clearly shows you should. Think of a photographer trying to get one last shot as a storm rolls in. I'm already set up, the light's almost gone, just one more.
The sunk cost fallacy applied to safety.
Pretty much. It makes hitting that eliminate button in the T model really hard psychologically.
What else?
Normalcy bias. This is the dangerous assumption that because things have been fine in the past under similar circumstances, they'll be fine now. Or because a threat hasn't materialized recently, it won't happen this time.
I've flown through worse weather than this. Or that warning light flickered last week too. It was nothing.
Exactly. It lulls you into complacency. When facing uncertainty, a pilot must assess the situation based on current data and risks, not just on whether they got lucky last time. Normalcy bias is the enemy of the perceived step. It makes you ignore or downplay real hazards.
Okay, so you fall into one of these traps, get their ATIS, scud running, plan continuation, normalcy bias. If you're flying solo, you don't have that co-pilot sitting next to you.
No safety net there.
No one to say, hey, check your altitude, or are you sure about pushing through this? That must be a huge challenge.
It is. And that specific challenge is what Single Pilot Resource Management, or SRM, was developed to address.
SRM, you mentioned it at the start. It's like CRM for one person.
Exactly. Crew Resource Management, CRM, came about in the 70s from studying airline accidents. It taught crews how to use all available resources, effectively people, equipment, information, to work together and maximize safety. SRM takes those same principles and adapts them for the pilot flying alone.
So how does a solo pilot manage resources they don't have in the cockpit?
They have to learn how to gather information effectively, analyze it critically, especially under stress, and make complex decisions all by themselves. But they do have resources outside the cockpit they need to utilize proactively.
Like what? Obviously, there's the aircraft systems, checklists.
Right, those are internal resources. But externally, think about air traffic control, ATC. They're not just voices giving instructions. They're a critical source of real-time information, traffic alerts, weather updates, and emergency assistance.
So good SRM means talking to ATC early and often.
Absolutely. Don't hesitate to ask for help or information. Second, flight service specialists, FSS. These are the weather experts. If conditions are changing or you're unsure about a forecast, call FSS. Don't try to guess or interpret ambiguous data yourself when experts are available.
ATC, FSS, any others?
Yes, and this one is often overlooked, especially in general aviation. Your passengers.
Really? How can passengers be a resource? Aren't they usually just along for the ride?
A good SRM pilot actively turns them into resources. It starts with a pre-flight briefing. Don't just show them the seatbelt and the six-sack.
What should you tell them?
You tell them, look, your job today is to help me keep us safe. If you see anything that looks unusual, maybe ice building up on the wing that I might not see easily, another aircraft getting close, or if you hear a strange noise, please speak up immediately. Don't worry about bothering me. Be my extra set of eyes and ears.
So you're empowering them to contribute.
Exactly. It fosters a shared sense of responsibility, and it gives you potentially crucial, unbiased information from an outside perspective, especially when you, the pilot, might be getting overloaded.
That overload. That brings us to probably the biggest mental challenge for a single pilot, right? Workload management and maintaining situational awareness, or SA.
They are absolutely intertwined. High workload is the primary killer of situational awareness.
How does that happen?
When a pilot gets task saturated, meaning they're juggling too many things at once, flying the plane, navigating, talking on the radio, running checklists, dealing with an unexpected issue, their cognitive capacity just shrinks. They tunnel vision.
Focusing only on one thing.
Yeah, maybe just keeping the wings level or trying to fix one problem, and they completely lose the bigger picture. They stop perceiving what's happening outside, or worse, what's about to happen next. They end up making decisions based on incomplete or outdated information.
Too busy flying the airplane to actually manage the flight.
That's a classic description. So the technique to fight this, whether it's a sudden emergency or just a complex approach, comes down to prioritization. You have to stop, think, slow down if possible, and prioritize ruthlessly.
Is there a standard way to prioritize?
Yes. The mantra is aviate, navigate, communicate, in that order. First, fly the airplane, maintain control. Second, navigate, know where you are and where you should be going. Third, communicate, talk to ATC, FSS, or declare an emergency if needed. Handle the most critical task first.
Aviate, navigate, communicate.
And a key skill in expert SRM is anticipating workload. Recognizing during periods of low workload, like cruise flight, that a complex phase is coming up, like the approach and landing. Use that quiet time to get ahead, tune radios, review the approach plate, complete checklists before you get into the high-stress environment. Manage your future workload proactively.
Smart. Use the calm before the storm.
Now, shifting gears slightly, we have to talk about automation in the cockpit, because in modern aviation, it's everywhere. And let's be clear, it's been a massive benefit overall.
Yeah, glass cockpits, sophisticated autopilots.
They significantly reduce pilot workload, especially on long flights. They enable incredibly precise navigation, like flying complex arrival and departure procedures, and they can definitely enhance situational awareness by presenting lots of data, weather, traffic, terrain clearly on integrated displays. Automation fundamentally is a good thing for safety and efficiency.
Okay, but, and I sense a but coming.
There's always a but with complex systems.
The sources we looked at really highlighted this idea of an automation paradox. It's a fantastic tool until it makes the human complacent or, maybe worse, de-skilled.
That's the crux of it. The risk of over-reliance and the resulting complacency or skill degradation is a very real ongoing concern in the industry.
We even found some data suggesting something quite specific. Pilots who do most of their primary training on modern EFIS, the electronic flight instrument systems, the glass cockpits.
Right, the big screens instead of round dials.
They become very good at managing the automation itself, which makes sense. That's what they trained on. But compared to pilots who train predominantly on older analog steam gauge cockpits, they sometimes show weaker fundamental manual flying skills.
The stick and rudder skills.
Yeah, especially when dealing with unexpected situations like an upset or an unusual attitude where they suddenly have to take over manually.
That finding about potential skill degradation is absolutely valid and something training departments grapple with constantly. If a pilot leans too heavily on the autopilot to just hold altitude and heading all the time, they can lose that physical feel for the aircraft. They don't sense subtle changes in airspeed or energy state through the controls anymore.
So what happens when the automation fails?
Well, if a complex autopilot suddenly disconnects, maybe during a critical phase of flight or at high altitude where things happen quickly, the pilot might be caught off guard. They're suddenly forced to take manual control, potentially with degraded skills under maximum stress. That's a recipe for loss of control.
And there's another issue too, isn't there? The monitoring problem.
Ah, yes, the monitoring dilemma. When automation is working perfectly, doing all the hard, repetitive flying tasks, what's the pilot's main job?
Watching the automation work, monitoring.
Right, but monitoring highly reliable automated systems is paradoxically very difficult for humans. It's cognitively demanding because you have to stay vigilant, but it's often incredibly boring.
Your attention wanders.
Exactly. Human attention flags quickly during passive monitoring. This leads directly to complacency. The pilot is there as the backup to catch the machine if it makes a mistake, but the very nature of the task makes them less effective at catching those rare errors.
The sources gave a really stark, tragic example of how automation errors can combine with this kind of complacency. That Colombian plane crash, where the crew entered the wrong waypoint into the FMS, the flight management system.
That accident involving Lamia Flight 2933 was a terrible illustration of this exact problem. It wasn't just an automation error, it was a data entry error by the crew, compounded by complacency and loss of situational awareness.
What happened?
They were apparently focused on the FMS display, trusting the magenta line on the screen to guide them. They entered an incorrect navigation point, essentially telling the automation to fly towards terrain. When ATC queried their position, they seemed unable to reconcile the discrepancy between where the automation was taking them and where they actually were relative to the airport and obstacles.
They lost track because they trusted the screen too much.
It appears so. They lost fundamental situational awareness map reading, cross-checking instruments, because they over-relied on the automation. That tragedy really drove home the point that while automation errors themselves might be rare, when they do occur, or when humans input bad data, the consequences can be catastrophic precisely because the automation masks the problem and erodes the pilot's own defensive monitoring.
So the answer isn't getting rid of automation. That ship has sailed.
No, not at all. Automation is essential now. The solution lies in better information management by the pilot and a disciplined commitment to maintaining manual flying proficiency.
Information management, meaning what?
Pilots in modern cockpits are swimming in data, screens everywhere. They have to learn to be selective, to prioritize the information that's most critical for the current task. Aviate, navigate, communicate, and actively filter out the noise, the less important stuff.
Don't get distracted by secondary information when primary control is needed.
Exactly. And crucially, pilots need to consciously decide when to use automation. Use it to reduce workload during less critical phases? Sure. But actively choose to fly manually, especially during takeoff, landing, and maneuvering flight, specifically to maintain proficiency and that feel for the aircraft.
Treat manual flying like a skill you have to practice regularly or lose.
Precisely. Automation should be seen as a powerful assistant, a tool to help the pilot fly better and safer, but never as a replacement for the pilot's own awareness and skill. It's a servant, not the master.
Okay, let's bring this back to the everyday, this complacency issue. It happens everywhere, right? Trusting a spreadsheet model without really understanding the formulas inside.
Definitely. Or relying so heavily on GPS navigation in your car that you literally can't read road signs or use a map anymore.
Complacency loves routine. If you're a pilot flying the same route day after day, or even in our jobs doing the same tasks repeatedly, how do you actively fight that mental dullness? How do you keep the perceived steps switched on?
You have to consciously inject challenge and novelty. Pilots use specific mental techniques. One is actively running what-if scenarios.
Playing mental games?
Sort of. Before takeoff, even on a routine flight, a pilot might mentally rehearse an engine failure scenario specific to that runway, that departure path. Where would I turn? What altitude do I need to clear those obstacles? What's my immediate action plan? It forces active engagement with the current environment, not just assuming it's the same as yesterday.
Keeps the mind sharp.
Exactly. The other technique is to deliberately vary your routine when conditions allow. If you always fly the exact same arrival route, maybe ask ATC for a different approach, or fly at a slightly different altitude profile on a clear, calm day.
Mix it up.
Right. By introducing controlled, safe novelty, you force your brain out of its cognitive autopilot mode and make it actively engage with the task again. Complacency is defeated by conscious, deliberate effort. You have to actively work against it. What's really compelling about this whole ADM framework, the 3P loop, PAV, care, team, IMSAVE, is how incredibly adaptable it is. It's not just for airline captains or pilots of manned aircraft.
You're saying it applies directly to the drone world too?
Absolutely perfectly. We can transition these exact same core principles into the rapidly growing world of small unmanned aircraft systems, or SUAS drones. In the U.S., these operations mostly fall under FAA Part 107 regulations.
Okay.
Under Part 107, the remote pilot in command, the RPIC, is designated as the final authority. They are legally responsible for the safety and compliance of the entire operation. That's in the rules 107.19.
So the buck stops with the drone pilot.
Completely. Which means the RPIC must be running these same continuous risk management loops: perceive, process, perform. They just have a slightly different, sometimes unique set of hazards to perceive.
Like what kind of unique hazards?
Things like radio frequency interference disrupting the control link, understanding battery performance and degradation curves, dealing with manufacturer software limitations like geofencing, or navigating the very specific compliance rules for flying at night or near people.
Let's make this concrete. Can we walk through applying the 3P loop to some common, maybe complex drone mission scenarios? See how the model guides decisions and ensures compliance?
Great idea. Let's take 3 common examples.
Okay, scenario 1. The hazard of night operations. A pilot needs to film something after sunset. What's the ADM process?
Okay, first step, perceive. The RPIC identifies the hazards. Obviously low visibility, making it harder to see the drone and potential obstacles. Difficulty tracking the drone against a dark background. Maybe harder to spot unlit moving vehicles or people on the ground below.
Right, darkness hides things.
Next, process. Using care, the pilot checks the reality against the regulations. Night flight under Part 107 is now pretty standard, but it's only allowed if 2 conditions are met. 1, the pilot must have completed the required night operations knowledge training or testing. 2, the drone must be equipped with anti-collision lighting visible for at least 3 statute miles, so 107.29.
So if either of those is missing, no training, or lights not working bright enough?
Then the risk is unacceptable. The perform step using team demands eliminate. No flight. It's a hard gate.
But if they are compliant, training done, lights on.
Then the perform action is mitigate. You proceed, but using specific night procedures. We often use a mnemonic. Lights, label, LASEC, lookout. Check the anti-collision lights. Ensure the drone is properly labeled with its registration. Obtain LAAC authorization if operating in controlled airspace at night. And consider using a visual lookout, VO, to help scan the darker areas. Oh, and importantly, while you can dim the anti-collision light if its intensity compromises safety, like causing glare, you can never turn it off during the night operation.
Got it. Lights, label, LANC, lookout. Mitigate the inherent risks of night flight.
Exactly.
Okay, scenario 2. Hazard of people and moving vehicles. Let's say the job is filming a crowded street festival or parade. Lots of spectators, cars moving around underneath the potential flight path.
Big hazards. Perceive step immediately flags dense spectators and unpredictable moving vehicles as having catastrophic severity potential.
If the drone fell.
Yeah.
Catastrophic.
So the process step using care must immediately confront the reality check against the rules. Flying over people or moving vehicles under Part 107 is now governed by the complex Subpart D rules. Depends heavily on the drone having a specific safety classification, Category 1 through 4, based on manufacturer testing and labeling related to impact, energy, or safety mitigations.
So if the drone isn't category rated for flight over people, if it's just a standard drone without that specific safety declaration,
then the plan hits another hard gate. The risk is legally unacceptable. The perform step demands eliminate. You simply cannot perform sustained flight directly over the people or moving vehicles. That top-down shot over the main crowd. Off the table.
So what can you do? Use mitigate.
Yes, you have to mitigate creatively within the rules. Maybe use lateral tracking shots from the side, staying clear of the crowds. Set up physical barriers like cones or caution tape to create a sterile operating area underneath your flight path if possible. Maintain a significant standoff distance, perhaps 50 meters or more, especially for moving vehicles, to satisfy the intent of Section 107.145, which covers operations near them. The 3P loop forces you to find a safe, compliant alternative, preventing you from just hoping for the best or falling into planned continuation bias.
Makes sense. You have to respect those subpart D categories.
Absolutely critical.
Okay, final scenario, airspace and obstacles. Imagine a job doing a rooftop inspection, but it's right next to a tall construction crane and the location is inside Class D controlled airspace near an airport.
Multiple hazards there. Perceive. Controlled airspace requires authorization. The crane boom is a significant physical obstacle. Maybe RF interference from the crane too.
And let's say the job needs the drone to go up to 140 feet above ground level, AGL, to clear the roof structure. But the Automated Airspace Authorization System, LAANC, only approves flights up to 100 feet in that specific grid location.
Okay, classic conflict. Process step reality check. The LAANC grid ceiling, 100 feet, is lower than the required mission altitude, 140 feet. Flying above 100 feet without further authorization would violate airspace regulations. unacceptable risk.
So the mission is impossible.
Not necessarily. The required alternative from CARE is to seek authorization for the higher altitude. You can't use the instant LANC approval, so you'd need to submit a manual airspace authorization request through the FAA's Drone Zone portal well in advance, specifically asking for permission to operate up to 140 feet in that location.
Assuming you get that authorization, what about the crane?
Now we apply team actions under perform. For the crane hazard, you might transfer some risk by using a dedicated visual observer, VO. Their only job is to keep eyes on that crane boom and communicate its position and any movement relative to the drone. You also mitigate by carefully planning your flight path to maximize distance from the crane and, critically, setting the drone's return-to-home RTH altitude significantly above the highest point of the crane.
So if it loses signal or has a battery issue, it automatically climbs above the obstacle before returning.
Precisely. Building in that safety margin.
You mentioned earlier that the drone world has some unique hard gates that pilots need to check now, especially in the US, things that weren't always there.
Yes, two really critical ones have emerged that must be part of the perceived step for any Part 107 operation today. First is remote ID, or RID.
The drone's electronic license plate, basically.
Kind of. It's the requirement for most drones operating under Part 107 to broadcast identification and location information during flight. Enforcement of this rule became active on March 16, 2024. It's not optional.
So if your drone isn't equipped with RID or it's not functioning correctly,
the team action is immediate and mandatory. Eliminate or delay the flight. Full stop. You fix the RD situation or you don't fly. The mantra is RD before you ride. There's no mitigation for non-compliance other than getting compliant.
Okay, RID is a hard gate. What's the second one?
Geofencing. This is the software built into many drones by manufacturers that's supposed to prevent them from flying into restricted areas like airports.
That sounds like a helpful safety feature.
It can be, but pilots cannot blindly rely on it for legal compliance anymore. Why? Because some manufacturers have shifted their approach. Instead of a hard block preventing flight into sensitive areas, some systems now just provide a warning that the pilot can actually override.
So the drone might let you fly somewhere you're not legally allowed to be.
Potentially, yes. The RPIC, the remote pilot in command, remains legally responsible for ensuring the flight complies with all airspace restrictions and temporary flight restrictions, TFRs, regardless of what the drones app might allow you to do. Think about those pop-up stadium TFRs around major sporting events. 3 nautical mile radius, up to 3,000 feet. Your geofencing might just give you a warning, but the rule requires you to eliminate that flight area entirely.
So your own ADM, your own knowledge and discipline has to be the ultimate hard gate, not just the software.
Precisely. You cannot delegate regulatory responsibility to the manufacturer's software.
Just to broaden the perspective slightly, how universal are these ADM principles? If we look across the border, say, to Canada, do their drone pilots use similar frameworks?
The underlying principles, absolutely. The mental model travels perfectly. Whether you're operating under FAA Part 107 or Transport Canada's regulations, CRR Part 9, the core safety tenets are the same. Maintain visual line of sight, VLOS, respect altitude limits, usually around 400 feet AGL, manage risk, understand human factors. ADM is global best practice.
So the thinking is the same, but the specifics differ.
Exactly. The regulatory envelope changes, and the administrative tools change. For instance, in the U.S., we use LANC for automated access to controlled airspace near airports. Canada uses a system called NAV drone for similar purposes.
Different app, same goal.
Right. The U.S. now mandates remote ID nationwide for most operations. Canada, in its latest major drone regulation updates, chose not to implement a universal RID mandate, focusing more on pilot certification and drone registration. Operation Near People also has different specific requirements. The U.S. uses those aircraft categories under Subpart D, while Canada uses a system based on pilot declarations about the drone safety features for different types of operations.
So the mental checklist, airspace discipline, obstacle awareness, pilot fitness remains identical. But the specific rules and paperwork you check off in the process step change depending on where you are.
You got it. The 3P framework lets you plug in the relevant local rules and hazards seamlessly.
We've covered the framework, the tools, the traps, the applications. How does a pilot or a team move beyond just knowing these acronyms? How do they achieve real mastery, true expertise in ADM?
It boils down to one thing: iterative learning. Mastery in ADM is never a finished state. It's a continuous process of refinement.
How do professional teams do that?
The best ones build and maintain a hazard library. They literally catalog the most common hazards they face in their specific types of operations. Maybe it's known spots with bad radio interference near cell towers, or the location of frequently encountered construction cranes. And crucially, they document the standard pre-approved team mitigation strategy right next to each hazard.
So they pre-plan responses to common problems.
Exactly. They also practice what some call micro-SOP Kaizen, meaning they review and potentially tweak their standard operating procedures, even just slightly, after every single job based on what they learned or encountered.
Constant improvement.
And they institutionalize the post-flight debrief. This isn't just casual chat. It's a structured review. What went well, what didn't, any near misses, any new hazards identified. It's like running your own internal version of NASA's Confidential Aviation Safety Reporting System, ASRS, that manned pilots use.
Logging the lessons learned.
Yes, and even tracking simple metrics. Things like, how many times did we have to change the flight plan mid-mission this week? Or how much time did we spend dealing with unexpected geofencing issues? This generates data. That data feeds directly back into the perceive and process steps for future flights, making the whole 3P loop smarter, more predictive, and more robust over time. That relentless cycle of fly, debrief, learn, adapt, that's the hallmark of true expertise. #outro.
Well, we have certainly covered a lot of ground over perhaps airspace today. We started with that sobering story, the tragic result of decades of unchecked anti-authority attitude in a very experienced pilot.
A tough but necessary starting point.
And from there, we systematically built up the mental toolkit, the 3P loop, PAVE, CARE, team, IMSAFE. We saw how these structured frameworks apply not just to complex instrument flight, but also directly to the nuanced world of modern drone operations under Part 107.
Yeah, when you pull it all together, what really stands out is that ADM, it's so much more than just a niche set of rules for pilots. It's really, in essence, a kind of highly developed, rigorously tested flight simulator for life.
A flight simulator for life. I like that.
Think about it. The core principles, systematically perceiving hazards, analyzing risk with tools like a matrix, aggressively managing those external pressures that push us towards bad decisions, maintaining sharp situational awareness to avoid getting overwhelmed, and consciously recognizing and countering our own hazardous attitudes.
That's a toolkit for complex decision-making anywhere.
In any high-stakes field, absolutely. Yeah. Business, medicine, finance, even just managing complex personal situations.
We spent a good bit of time talking about those operational pitfalls, especially the ones driven by external factors. Things like get-there-itis or plan continuation bias, that powerful urge to just stick with the original plan even when things are clearly going sideways.
Those pressures are incredibly common.
So building on that, here's our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to take away today. Think about a significant decision you're facing sometime this week. Something where you feel external pressure pushing you in a certain direction. Maybe it's a tight deadline, a demanding client, peer pressure from colleagues, even just your own impatience. How can you consciously step back from the emotional pull of that pressure? Run a quick mental PAVE check, maybe even an IMSAFE check on yourself. And then how can you deliberately apply the most decisive actions from that team model, specifically eliminate or mitigate to ensure your final decision is driven by objective assessment and safety, not just by that external necessity or internal bias?
That act of recognizing the pressure, stepping outside it, and applying a structured decision filter. That's the ultimate mark of an expert decision maker, whether you're the pilot in command, the CEO, or just navigating daily life. And remember that final point about iterative learning, the commitment to constantly reflecting, refining your process after every scenario, every decision. That's what separates fleeting success from sustainable safety and true mastery, both in the air and right here on the ground.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep reflecting, and keep making smart decisions. That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.